welcome. I gotta find a new way to introduce these things. Hello and welcome to episode 48 of Abbott and Costello Meet the Podcast, a little thing that we are calling Ole and CHIC and Bud and Lou. I'm Jerry Shario, and as always, I have the pleasure of bringing to your attention the host of our podcast, actor, director, playwright, composer, musician, performer of many levels, a man who's been compared to LA traffic. A lot of honking, but never seems to get anywhere. Nick Santamaria.
Hello, folks. You know what? I'm happy. Anyway. What do you mean no honking? I can honk. I only do that when I'm goosed. But you know, it's these crazy kids today. Jerry, how are you, buddy boy?
Nick, I'm doing well, sir.
That was Droopy Dog.
It was. And it was a good Droopy Dog, too. Bill Thompson would have been jealous.
I love Droopy. Droopy is one of my favorite cartoon characters. And I didn't grow up with them. They didn't show those cartoons when I was a kid in New York. I didn't see a Tom and Jerry until I was in my late teens.
Wow.
You know, honestly.
Quick sideline. I was auditioning for a commercial. This is years back. Mm-hmm. And they wanted odd, crazy, weird stuff. That's how they advertised these auditions. So I went in to read the copy, and I did it as Droopy. Just to be weird, because it was kind of a down on his luck sort of a guy. Yeah. And so that's how I did it. And that's how they hired me, and that's what they wanted. That's how I did the commercial.
You see? You took a chance.
Yes.
And you know what? That's funny, because usually things do work out when you do something out of the ordinary. Mm-hmm. Something, it gives you an extra level of dopamine. It gives you that, those endorphins because you're doing something new and crazy.
Yeah, I certainly felt dopey doing it. So, yeah, that was.
Or droopy. But I was at an audition once and I realized, and this is way, I'm already like a Broadway veteran. I'm this, I'm that. I've been working for years. I went in for this audition and I forgot my picture and resume. So I immediately grabbed a piece of paper and a crayon, and I drew a terrible picture of myself as if like a 3-year-old did it. And I wrote my name on the bottom and I handed it in. And I told them, I'm really sorry. I know I look a little drawn, but... And I got a call back.
Nice.
Without a picture. But anyway, Today, ladies and gentlemen, all you people out there, we are looking at the comedy team that came aboard at Universal Studios at the same time, practically the same time as our boys, Abbott and Costello. And I find that kind of interesting because they had their hands full with Abbott and Costello. And I don't mean because they were difficult. I mean because they were doing 17 movies a year, So it was like a factory. They were writing the next Abbott and Costello movie as they were shooting the last one. So it was very Abbott and Costello centric at Universal Studios. That is proven by the fact that in 3 of these films, I believe, Abbott and Costello are mentioned by Olsen and Johnson. It's interesting to note that also somebody had written to me and said, did they get along, Bud and Lou and Olsen and Johnson? Yes. Olsen and Johnson produced their Broadway show, Streets of Paris. I don't think they would have hired anyone they didn't like or admire. And Ole and CHIC weren't especially known for their original material. In fact, Ole Olsen owned the largest collection of jokes in the world. He paid what the equivalent would be here, over $2.5 million for jokes that went all the way back to the 1700s. He had every single Joe Miller joke book. He just he went nuts. He bought and it was all stored in his place in Malvern, Long Island, where I practically grew up, and had no idea he had a place there. I mean, not that he was still alive when I was there, but my favorite aunt lived there, and I practically grew up there. So it was really weird to hear that he owned land. He owned a home in Malvern, Long Island. Yeah. But anyway, they were quite something, those boys, quite something. Now, what we're looking at today, mostly, are the 4 movies they made at Universal Studios from 1941 to 1945. Now, there were 4 movies made then. Why didn't they make as many as Abbott and Costello? We're going to get to that. There's also a very sane answer for that as well. Funny to use the word sane when you're talking about Ole and Chick. They are they make the Marx Brothers look timid. They,
Hmm.
they are just, they walk around with explosives.
Yes.
I always called them the most dangerous comedy team in the world. They have they pull out guns, they pull out rifles. If God forbid a bird should go by, they take out their rifles and they destroy it. Feathers come down, they hold out a plate, and the bird will come down already cooked on the plate. They are just absolutely insane. And
Hmm.
under the right circumstances, there are a few things more satisfying in 1940s comedy. And that's an amazing statement to make, but it's true. It's absolutely
Hmm.
true. When it's working on all tubes, at one time, it is just joyous and wonderful. So here's what I want to do. I want, number one, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Olson and Johnson's history. Then I want to talk about Hell's a Poppin' and where it comes from, what a phenomenon it was back in the late 30s and all of that. And then, and this is what I'm especially interested in, I can't wait to hear Jerry's assessment of these films compared to the ones I'm going to give you. So this is what I love to do. You've got someone like Jerry who's very, very keyed into comedy, not only as a viewer, but as a performer. So that gives him an edge, as far as I'm concerned. It gives him an edge. And I can't wait to get to that point. But
Okay.
before we do, I believe
A word from our sponsor. No.
a word from our sponsor. Hello. Do you cough every time the word Norman is mentioned? Norman? See, I do. Um, anyway, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. All right, so we're talking about Olson and Johnson. Chick Johnson is the older of the two, only by a few months. He was born Harold Ogden Johnson. I don't know where he got the nickname Chick, but he is forever known as Chick Johnson. He is of Swedish extraction, and so are his teeth. John Olson was born John Sigvard Olson, another Swedish fellow. He was born in Peru, Indiana, in 1892, in November of 1892. Chick was born in Chicago. Maybe that's where it comes from. The first four letters of Chicago is Chick.
Hmm.
And he was born March 5th, 1891. So he's a Pisces. They were incredible. They started out as musicians, honest to goodness musicians, and good ones. Chick played the piano, and Ole played the violin. And they were both hired for the same band, and they were in vaudeville with that band. And as they got to know each other, they realized that not only was there more money in them being a duo and doing comedy, but they could, they would just make more money and become stars away from the band where they were
Hmm.
just two other players. So this was around 1914. And when they got together, no joke was too old, no song was too corny. They actually wrote songs, a couple of hits, in fact. What was that one called? Oh gee, oh gosh, oh golly, I'm in love. I think that's called. I forget.
Hmm.
But anyway, they were musicians and they used that in their comedy. They made some recordings when they were in vaudeville of comedy bits, and eventually they started gathering so much material and so many stooges, it became what they were known for. It was basically the genesis of Hell's a Poppin'. Now, they started doing this show around the country. They had all these different vaudeville acts, acrobats and musicians and singers and you name it, jugglers. And it became like almost like a circus, a comedy circus. And they were the ringmasters. Jerry Lewis, when he was asked about their comedy skills, Jerry Lewis said they were like two Burt Parks. Now, if you know Burt Parks, he was the host for years of game shows and the Miss America pageant. And he
Hmm.
was known for being, kind of bland, not funny, just a presenter. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So Jerry didn't think they were very comical, that they had any juice as comedians. I disagree. You had two guys who kind of broke the mold. You had one who was kind of tall and slim. You had one who was kind of short and dumpy. The short and dumpy one was the more comical of the two, but Ole was also comical. He wasn't like
Hmm.
Bud Abbott, who was the absolute opposite of Costello. They were more like the Ritz brothers. You know what I mean?
Mm.
They were like a duo together, and they both like agreed and did everything together, like the Ritz brothers. So anyway, they were in vaudeville. They traveled all over the country. They played county fairs, and it was a huge act. It was a huge popular act, especially in the Midwest, where they loved that kind of hokey stuff, that kind of hokey humor at the time. So what happens? They make their first movies. Warner Brothers calls them in 1930, and they make, I think, 4 movies for Warner Brothers early on, and most of them are available on YouTube. I believe the first one was "Oh Sailor Behave," and it's kind of good. It's, it's early, it's a little creaky, but the guys come off really well. And I think these early Warner Brothers movies, for the most part, were a lot of fun. There's one where they are demoted. They were kind of starring in these movies up until they made a movie with Winnie Leitner, who was they were trying to promote as a star at Warner Brothers, and they supported her. And their material was so bad, and it was such a chore to get through. I could see why there were no more after that one. I'm trying to think of what the name was, but anyway, look it up. Warner Brothers, Olsen and Johnson. So they make the movies for Warner Brothers. They didn't make a great impression. However, on radio, they started making a name for themselves. They started doing the summer replacement series for Rudy Valley, the Fleischmann's Yeast Hour. Boy, they rose to that occasion. And it was called The Padded Cell of the Air. And that explains it. That explains it pretty well. But they flirted with radio all through their careers. But mostly they toured the country doing their show. And eventually, this show that they called Monkey Business for a while, they decided to put it all together in one big Broadway show. And they partnered with the Schuberts. And in 1938, they opened what became the longest running musical comedy until Fiddler on the Roof. We're talking 3 years and 4 different theaters, I believe, and over 1,400 performances. Now, to me, it's amazing because this
Yeah.
show was different every night. The show, you didn't know what to expect. They called it controlled chaos. And everything was very well mapped out. And Ole was backstage buying new material from young writers, coming in with new gags. So things were constantly, I love it. Things were constantly moving. It was great. It was like an Olsen and Johnson movie backstage. Hal Cantor was one of those young writers who spoke about dealing with Ole. And that CHIC was the shyer of the two. Whereas in the act, he's definitely the most, gregarious and the
Hmm.
funniest of the two. But I know they both had kidney problems later on. I wonder if it hit them that early on.
Mm.
That's what killed them both eventually. So sophisticated Broadway audiences would come to watch Hell's a Poppin', and they would fall out of their chairs laughing. It was just 1 minute you had a lady running through the audience yelling for her husband Oscar, and that was usually, like in the movie, that's Chick's wife Catherine. uh, the whole family was involved. Ole Olson had son-in-laws and brother-in-laws and wives, and it's just amazing. Everybody was part of the fun, and they had all these vaudeville acts. It was basically a huge, crazy vaudeville show right there on Broadway. And boy, oh boy, did it go? Did it play? It had a life for years, for decades, actually. They sent out road companies for years,
Mm.
starring people like J.C. Flippin and Joe Besser, people like that, really funny people going out with this show. So, anyway, they followed that up with a message from Universal Studios saying, "We want to put Hell's a Poppin' in the movies. We want to make a movie out of it." Now, if you've ever seen Hell's a Poppin', the movie, you wonder what happened. Universal just really went all out and really made an amazing film. It's an amazing film. And I don't care what anyone says. Not only is it amazing, but it's groundbreaking and it's influential even today. I know this reference is like 46 years old at this point, but even the movie Airplane has a gag that they stole from Hell's a Poppin'. It's that
Mm-hmm.
kind of movie. But moving on, they made 4 movies for Universal that we're going to be looking at. But in the meantime, they opened another show on Broadway, another hit called Sons of Fun. They came up later with one called Laughing Room Only. And then the last one was called Pardon Our French, and that one it only lasted 3 months. I think the well was dry at that
Mm.
point. But then, like in the late 50s, they even came up with a Hell's a Splashin', a water show at Flushing Meadows, Queens, Long Island. Hell's a Splashin'. So they wrung every last drop of madness out of this Hell's a Poppin' franchise. Let's put it that way. In 1949, NBC Television hired them for Fireball Fun for All, sponsored by Buick and their Fireball 8 engine. I was telling Jerry before we started, I had seen the first episode of this show, Fireball Fun for All, and it really lays there. It's really bad.
Mm.
It's 1949. It's creaky. It's the thing is, Olsen and Johnson relied so much on props and the timing of things going on backstage or up in the catwalk or whatever. Things were being thrown, dropped, blown up. I mean, it was just crazy, even on television. But the cameras couldn't follow what was going on.
Right.
Everything was happening so fast and crazy that the camera will be looking at an empty curtain while something's going on, way to the right. So they didn't have it down yet on the first show. But what did I do? I watched the last show of the series. And guys, I'm going to give you that link when I post this, but it really is Olsen and Johnson like you want to see Olsen and Johnson. They
Mm.
really got it down by that point. So you'll get to see some good television, Olsen and Johnson. They were also part of the All-Star Review. They were rotating hosts with Jack Carson and Ed Wynn and Danny Thomas and what have you. And they had an interesting TV series in 1957 on ABC. It was a children's series called Popsicle 5-Star Comedy. It was Saturday evenings, I suppose it was early evenings, and it featured the ventriloquist Paul Winchell and
Mm.
Senor Wences.
Wow.
Yeah, and a cartoonist storyteller named Bob Bean, like Lima Bean. Towards the end, they continued with their rowdy reviews, their crazy things, mostly in Las Vegas. They were very charitable. They raised money for a lot of charities. They were known to be nutty but nice. But anyway, basically, Chick had to drop out in the late 50s due to his health, his lack of health. He died in 1962 of kidney disease.
Mm.
And just a few months later, his partner followed him in
Wow.
1963 of kidney disease. Now, here's a story I have to share, and I'll try to do it as quickly as possible. I was in Las Vegas for a little over a year doing the producers for Mel Brooks. And I knew that Olsen and Johnson were buried somewhere in Las Vegas. So I made it a point to find the cemetery and then the even more difficult accomplishment of finding the actual graves. So I went to the office. I found the cemetery. I went to the office. They had no idea who I was talking about. They had no idea where they were. And they actually put me in I got to ride around in their little golf cart and we looked around. And finally, when they let me off, we couldn't find anything. I was leaving and I looked down and there it was. I happened upon it. And here's the story. Chick died first. Johnson died first. And they had planned to be buried next to each other. So Chick was buried on the left side. He was buried
Mm-hmm.
first.
Mm-hmm.
Then a few months later, Ole died. And they couldn't put him in the right grave on the right side because it would be Johnson and Olsen. So they exhumed Johnson. This is right out of Olsen and Johnson. I mean, this could be the movie. They
Oh.
exhumed Johnson, put him in the right grave, and then buried Ole where he belonged, in top billing. So it became Olsen and Johnson. And in the middle, between them, was their saying that they would say, it was a toast they would make at the end of every show. And it would be, may you live as long as you want, and may you laugh as long as you live. And that's there forever. And that's it. That's their that's their story.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? That's the story of Olsen and Johnson, two comedians I like very much. I admire them very much. Okay, so let's say they're at Universal,
Mm-hmm.
and people are a little worried. This is what I love about Hell's a Poppin'. When I was a kid, and I'm sure, Jerry, you've had the same experience, Leonard Maltin's Movie Comedy Teams, that book,
Yep.
very important to all of us, very seminal, a great book. The chapter about Olsen and Johnson really kind of puts down the movie version of Hell's a Poppin'. He said, "Oh no, they had to put in a love story, and they had to like do things that Hollywood would do, and they took away the craziness." The bottom line is, and I'm sorry, Leonard, I love you, but the bottom line is, had they filmed what was going on at the Winter Garden Theater, it would have been a vaudeville show on film. Let me tell you how they opened the Broadway show. You're going to love this, Jerry. Since this was 1938, the
Mm-hmm.
Nazis had already come into power. The world was already starting to go crazy. We were heading towards, we had to make a decision, all this stuff. What did they do? They opened the curtains, and there was Hitler making a speech with a Jewish accent. Then they cut to Mussolini making a speech, and it was black dialect. It was minstrel
Oh.
show black dialect.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, but to me, that is just, not only is it brave, to do something like
Yes.
that, but so clever. My God, just to take the piss out of those guys. It's just,
Yeah.
the audience must have went nuts. You know, what a thing, what a way to open it. But anyway, Universal couldn't do that, and Leonard was like, "Oh, why did they have to make it like a real movie?" Because it's a real movie.
Yeah.
Because it's Hollywood. You got to. And you know what? None of it is offensive. Even when they
No.
cut to the young lovers, it's enough of a funny triangle. This one wants to marry the girl wants the other one doesn't want to step on his friend's toes.
Yeah.
Oh, the third person, by the way, in that opening, it was Mussolini, Hitler, and Franklin Roosevelt speaking all gibberish, all double talk. So those were the three clips they showed before Hell's a Poppin' began. Now, some of the gags were taken over in the movie that were so famous in the show. The guy looking for Mr. Jones holding the plant that got bigger and bigger every time he showed up. So when the people were leaving the theater, he would be in the lobby at the top of this really tall tree yelling, "Mrs. Jones, Mrs. Jones." Then you had Chick's wife running around looking for her husband, Oscar. Oscar! Oscar! That carries over into the movie. And I love when Ole says, "Will somebody please stop that woman from yelling Oscar?" And you hear a gunshot. And he goes, "Thank you." They kill more people in this movie. The
Yep.
cameraman, George Chandler, is like, "How long is this movie going to take? We're going to do it until we're finished." "Oh no!" And you hear the gunshot. And the director says, "Get us another cameraman." And we were worried about Bud handing Lou a gun and Pardon My Sarong. But speaking of which, this was produced by the same company. Yes, this was Universal, but it was also Mayfair Productions, who also produced Pardon My Sarong.
Mm.
That was a separate company that released through Universal, used all their technical guys, their directors, their writers, everybody, their cast. It might as well have just been Universal. But this was Mayfair, and they were big Abbott and Costello fans more than anything. I
Mm.
think that might be why they're mentioned so much in these movies. Uh, and they are. But anyway, Hell's a Poppin', directed by H.C. Potter, an A-list director. This is an A-list movie. This cost as much as Abbott and Costello movies, which had nice budgets, which had mostly A budgets at this
Mhm.
point. Again, H.C. Potter, excellent director. Interesting to note, who's the projectionist in this movie?
Shem Howard.
Shem Howard, the great Shem Howard. And he's having trouble with his girlfriend, played by the great Jodie Gilbert, who we love. And she's hilarious. And Chick and Ole. are constantly dealing with the projectionist, who is Shemp Howard. Well, H.C. Potter didn't like that idea, or it
Mm.
didn't come up yet. His idea was to have Olsen and Johnson talking to the projectionist in the theater where the movie is actually being shown. So you don't see Shemp. Shemp was an afterthought.
Ah.
It was shot where Chick and Ole are just talking to the local projectionist.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you, I like that idea better. I love Shemp
Mm.
Howard. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And he's very
Mm-hmm.
funny in this. But I love the idea that they localized it, that they're
Mm.
talking to, Joe Smith in the projection booth, that everybody knows in the neighborhood.
Mm.
Not that they're using the names or anything, but and it's very basic. But I just think it's more innovative. It's more clever
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
than Shemp ripping the film in half and throwing the reels around and whatever, getting slapped by Jody Gilbert. But anyway, so that was my thought. So they went back afterwards and they got in touch with comedy warhorse Eddie Klein, who was one of W.C. Fields' favorite directors because he would just let W.C. Fields go.
Mm.
So they got Eddie Klein to shoot all that Shemp stuff, and they put it in the movie. So yeah, that's up to you guys, if you like that, or you don't like that. And
Mm-hmm.
believe me, Hell's a Poppin' is well represented on YouTube. You could watch it for free, and trust me, it'll change your life. It is just miraculous.
Yep.
It's that good. So we've got our director, our writer. Why is this so wacky? Why is this so zany? Nat Perrin.
Yep.
Not only did Nat Perrin come up with I'm holding up my quotation marks. Not only did he come up with the love story, but apparently, this was his whole idea about how to present this almost unfilmable Broadway show. And I'm laughing, but it's true. It would seem unfilmable. So Nat Perrin and a guy named Warren Wilson were the writers on this. As far as the cast is concerned, I have a feeling Jerry's going to agree with me on this. Martha Raye practically steals this film. I
Yes.
think she's the motor, she's the engine, and she is just hilariously funny. She earns her third billing under Chick and Ole, and her songs and her shtick at the end during the show is just wonderful. It's aces. It's one of her best performances on film. But you've also got Misha Auer. Now, Misha Auer started out as a regular character actor, okay? He appeared in a lot of early creaky horror movies, especially because he had an
Mm.
interesting look. He was very
Mm-hmm.
gaunt, a very thin face, very dark. But then eventually he got, oh, what's the name of the movie with William Powell and Carol Lombard? It's been in public domain forever.
My Man Godfrey?
My Man Godfrey. Thank you. My brain is not working. My Man Godfrey hired him as a character that almost stole the movie. He's
Yeah.
hilarious. Carlo, his name is Carlo, and he's just very funny. And his whole persona changed at that point. He became a comedian. And in this movie, this is what I love about him in this movie. He plays a real ex-Russian nobleman who had to leave because of the revolution, during 1918 or wherever it was, 17 or
Mm-hmm.
18. And he's invited to all these big parties because they think he's a phony. They think he's one of the many phony Russian guys who came out of that period. And there's a butler that works there that recognizes him from Russia, and he keeps shutting him up. Would you please don't call me Your Excellency? They have to believe I'm a phony, otherwise they're not amused by me. So he knows they're amused by him, and they keep him around just for laughs. And he is funny when he's at the food line with the bread.
Oh,
Do you remember that?
yes.
I want some bread. He puts a piece of bread. I said bread. He puts 6 pieces on. I said bread. And it gets bigger and bigger. Finally, he gives him an entire loaf cut in half. And he looks at it and he says, only 2 pieces? Well, I got to tell you, he and Martha Raye make an amazing team, and they should have
Mm-hmm.
made more movies together. Okay, so Hell's a Poppin', the movie, it's crazy. It's just absolutely nuts. Okay, so It's how do I explain this? It starts out.
You can't.
I know it's so hard to explain. It starts out with a musical number with these beautiful women coming down this beautiful staircase, and then of course the staircase flattens and they all slide down, and into a pit, and then they all go to hell. Everybody's in hell. I mean, they're stuffing guys into these big cans. It's called canned guy. And then they've got canned girl, and they're shipping them off. There's people on rotisseries with the fire and the whole bit. It's hilarious. And then all of a sudden the taxi cab shows up, right? And the door opens and like 10,000 animals come out. Dogs and ducks and geese and you name it. And then all of a sudden this little chihuahua comes out with a harness on and a chain attached and comes out and pulls both of them out of the cab. and Chick says one of the funniest lines in the movie, "That's the first cab driver who went directly where I told him to go." And then they look up and there's tiny Jack Lipson dressed as a little boy. He's about 450 pounds, tiny Jack Lipson. And his mother comes over and says, "My baby, my baby." And he goes, "Mommy." And he jumps from this high place, this high stage, and goes through the floor. And then the mother from the vibration also falls into the hole. And you hear, it's like an explosion. And then all of a sudden, oil starts coming out. And all Chick does is he turns to Ole and says, "They struck oil." And then they go on with this thing. It is just wild and hilarious. This jockey shows up, this midget, I'm sorry, this little person on a horse, and the horse has what looks like a tic-tac-toe sign on its rear end, and a guy named Freddie Sanborn, who was actually one of the Three Stooges for a very short time, actually one of the Four Stooges. If you watch the movie Soup to Nuts, their first movie, the one with Ted Healy, Fred Sanborn is one of them. And he comes out in this movie and Crazy House as well. But anyway, he comes over and he finishes up the tic-tac-toe on the horse, and that ends the whole hell sequence. And we realize that it's all being filmed by a crew. Chick and Ole walk off the set, and there they are with the director sitting in director's chairs and blah, 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 doing bad jokes. Chick gets a phone call, and it's like, "Yeah, that's good. Oh, no, that's bad. Oh, that's good. Oh, no, that's bad." And finally the director says, "What are you doing?" And he goes, I'm helping them sort a box of strawberries." I mean, that's one of their old jokes. But anyway, they're arguing with the director because they want to shoot Hell's a Poppin' like it was on Broadway. The director tells them, "You can't do that. You gotta have a story. You gotta have a love story." And they're like, "Why?" And he goes, "Why? This is Hollywood. That's why." It's really satirical. It's very intelligent. It's very telling. But anyway, so I love when he goes, "Here, look at the script. Look how heavy it is." That's how he judges the script. Then we meet the writer, who's Elijah Cook Jr. And he's a mess. And they don't want to shoot it that way. So they're arguing with the director. This is one of my favorite things in the whole movie. They're arguing with the director as he's walking away from them, and they're following him. And they're going from set to set. And as they go to each set, they take on the costumes of that set. So, for instance, they're walking through a winter scene. All of a sudden, when they come in, they've got these huge, enormous fur coats on and snowshoes and all that. And of course, they see the sled Rosebud from Citizen Kane. And Chick looks at it and just said, "I thought they burned that thing." This is the hippest comedy. I'm serious. This is the hippest comedy of the 1940s. I love Abbott and Costello. I think their movies are amazing, but this is hip. This is hip. So yeah, they walk through a Western scene. They're in Indian costumes, whatever. It's just very clever. Then the joke that Airplane stole. They turn around and a photographer comes in and says, "Boys, can I take your picture?" And they go, "Certainly." And they pose, and the guy runs over, takes a picture off their wall, and runs out. That was completely stolen by Airplane. Isn't
Hmm.
that funny? And I think when I saw Airplane back in 1980, and it was at Paramount Studios, it was the first screening. And I may have been the only person in the audience who said to himself, they stole from Olson and Johnson. so, so I don't know. I don't know about that. But anyway, so I'm going through this. Jerry, do you have anything you want to add at this point, right up to this point?
Right up to this point, I'm pretty much in agreement with you. A couple of things that did catch my attention, the fact that it is an adaptation, as you say, it would have been almost impossible to put the actual show Hell's a Poppin' in a movie, other than you're just setting up the cameras in the back row of the theater and letting them do it.
Mm-hmm.
There was a credit that caught my attention talking
Oh,
about the writing, Nat Perrin.
Nat
Um,
Perrin.
it said, suggested by the Broadway play Hell's a Poppin'.
And that tells you everything you need to know.
Exactly. And honestly, yeah, that summed it all up right there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they were able to keep the feel and the flavor of Hell's a Poppin' all throughout the movie, like the stuff with the projectionist, talking to the projectionist, having him,
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute, rewind that, let's go back,
Yes.
that kind of thing, which, Mel Brooks stole in Spaceballs.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're going to steal from the best.
Yeah. Well,
But
nobody was doing this then. Nobody
exactly,
was doing this.
exactly. But yeah, the I saw the attempted revival of Hell's a Poppin' in their late '70s, I think it was,
Yeah. It was
with
like 76,
yeah,
77.
Jerry
Yeah.
Lewis and Lynn Redgrave, and
Right.
they, of course, they kept paging Mrs. Jones,
Yeah.
the guy with the plant that was in there, and Oscar was in there. So some of that were nice throwbacks to the original play, but the
Right.
film itself just really captured the insanity, the irreverence, the satire, the everything
Yeah.
about
I
the
agree.
original play.
I
But
totally agree.
and they did it in a new and fresh way,
Hmm.
perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's interesting because, like I said, when Leonard Maltin was explaining it to me, and there was no way to see Hell's a Poppin' back then. You know,
yeah,
it's still in this country tied up in litigation, but in Europe, in England, it's common. You see it in video, places you buy DVDs and stuff.
mm,
In fact, those are the prints we have, on YouTube. But I know so many people that want those four movies in a box set from Universal, you
yeah,
know, all restored and maybe with commentaries and the whole bit. Why not? I think they're just afraid nobody's going to know who they were, Olson and
mm,
Johnson. But anyway, okay, that's good. I feel the same way about this movie. And Leonard was trying to say, "Oh no, they failed because they had to go to Hollywood traditions and all this stuff." No, like Jerry said, they kept the feel of the show itself
hmm,
within those confines.
yeah,
And when I was watching the film for the very first time, and this was back in 19, I don't know, no, back in around 2006 was the first time I saw Hell's a Poppin'. Boy, that was 20 years ago. My first thought was, this is incredible. I don't mind this love story at all. I think it's
yeah,
kind of endearing and it's kind of fun. Very quickly about the third guy on the triangle, you have Robert Page as our main guy.
hmm,
You've got Jane Frazee, who also made Buck Privates that year. And then you had a guy named Lewis Howard. Now, Lewis Howard, when I first saw the movie, I was like, who the hell is this guy? Number one, he's kind of odd looking. You know what I mean?
yes,
He's not like leading man handsome, and he's not character actor goofy. You know what I mean?
hmm, hmm,
He's like this weird, I don't know, hybrid, I guess.
yeah,
And I know he didn't last too long at Universal. He was one of the people that were, eventually let go. But what a tragic end he came to. My
mm,
God, he was in New York, and there were those things where you would you take the gun and you do shooting. You target, you'd hit the targets,
yeah.
ding, here you win a stuffed bear. He went to one of those things and he turned the gun on himself. can
Oh,
you can you imagine? Ugh. Anyway, I can't look at him without thinking of that. That's just such a
yeah.
horrible way to go. But anyway, so you had a fairly entertaining, love story in this, I
Mm-hmm.
have to
Mm-hmm.
say. Okay, now this this is so hard to explain, and I'm hoping our people go and actually watch this movie. For the people who haven't watched it yet, you're going to be so surprised, and you're going to have such a good time. Do
Mm-hmm.
it prime time when you're wide awake and you're really paying attention, because you're going to love it. And then you're going to have to watch it again because you're going to miss half the gags. That's how dense it is with comedy. I pay 10 cents a dance because I just made myself laugh. But anyway, they sit down with the director who's trying to explain the script to them and the whole thing with the triangle and all that stuff. They sit down. He puts up a picture of the scene. And it's just a photograph. And as they're sitting there, the photograph comes to life. And we start seeing the first scenes, but it's only with their voiceovers as they're watching the scenes from the director's chair in the studio, right? And then eventually it cuts to the movie itself. So you've got the opening number to Hell's a Poppin'. Then you have the director saying, "We can't do what you want to do. We're going to have to do it our way." We meet the writer. We kill the cameraman, the whole thing, and then he sits down and shows them the script. And then we see, while looking at the script, we see the movie come to life. And it doesn't come to life at one time. We're
No.
still talking over the movie. And then all of a sudden, the characters in the movie start talking to Chick and Ole, who are still in the studio, but then they show up on the screen. This is I'm going a little crazy just trying to describe this. It's nuts. And they show up. Here's the thing: they're putting on a big show at Jane Frazie's mansion. She's the daughter of Clarence Kolb, and he's a millionaire. And Robert Page is the guy who has written the show and the songs and all that stuff. He's putting up the show. He's in love with Jane Frazee, but she's engaged to Lewis Howard. Now, Lewis Howard is kind of an insecure fellow, it seems. He's a very odd character.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, Robert Page won't hit on Jane Frazee because he's a friend of Lewis Howard. He doesn't want to offend him, but Jane Frazee really loves Robert Page, and blah blah blah. Anyway, that doesn't matter. We have Chick and Ole make their appearance in the actual film at this point. They are Robert Page's assistants, and they show up in a truck full of props. And props are very important to Chick and Ole. The balloon bit with the butler is
Yes.
so good. They take out this big thing of balloons and they hand it to the butler off the truck, right? The butler starts floating away. And before he floats completely away, they hand him a suitcase and that brings him back down again. And then something happens where he loses the suitcase, he goes back up again, and of course, Chick takes out a rifle and explodes the balloons, and the guy falls down. Then they hand a big block of ice that I think was left over from horse feathers, uh, and they hand it to poor Clarence Kolb, who doesn't know what the hell's going on, and he walks around for the next three scenes holding this block of ice, and he wants to call the police. He wants to call the police, but who shows up? Our intrepid detective, Hugh Herbert. And I have to tell
Yes.
you, he is hilarious in this movie. He is just hilarious. He plays a detective that changes costumes like every scene. He's in a different terrible costume, doing some terrible jokes. He's wonderful. So anyway, there you go. You've got Martha Ray, you've got Chick and Ole, you've got Hugh Herbert, Misha Auer. So we're well supplied with funny people. Okay, so I don't know how else do we explain this?
I don't think we can.
It's it's so,
You
it's
have to
so
watch it.
you really do to get the essence of what we're talking about. I just want to say before we go on to the next films, because we have a lot to cover. Hell's a Poppin' is a unique experience. If you're not an old movie buff and you feel like old movies, oh, they're all the same. Oh, the Abbott and Costello, they're all the same. This is a movie that is so not all the same. It will make your head spin. I
Yep.
promise you. Watch this movie and just giggle yourself nuts. You're going to go crazy. And, have your significant other along with you because it's more fun with people. I have not seen this movie in a movie theater, and I wish I can. I really
Yeah.
wish I could. It's such a crowd pleaser. It's so great. I did get to see Crazy House in with an audience,
Ah.
but we'll get to that later. Okay, so Hell's a Poppin', Hell's a Poppin', Hell's a different neighborhood. Hell's a Poppin'. It had its premiere at the Rivoli Theater in New York City on Christmas Day. What a gift! Christmas
Hmm.
Day, 1941. The first performance was at 10 a.m. for 2,000 orphans. Isn't that great?
Oh.
They must have had a ball. And then they had a 2 o'clock performance for 2,000 soldiers and sailors.
Hmm.
How about that? And then the official premiere was in the evening. Now, I have to tell you, this movie was the only movie at that time that matched the profits that Abbott and Costello's movies were making. Hell's a Poppin' made $1,700,000. That's a
Wow.
fortune. A fortune. That's like Buck Private's money, which
Yeah.
was a phenomenon at the time. So the problem was they actually would have made a lot more money in New York. They actually were considered a flop in New York because it closed, I think, only after a week. But the problem was that the show was still running, and people thought that it was the Broadway show when they
Ah.
saw Hills of Pop and Olsen and Johnson. So they didn't go. They had already seen it on Broadway. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So they lost a lot of business in New York, but they eventually went out to be a huge hit. And this carried over to their next film, which was also an A level production based on the success of Hell's a Poppin'. But unfortunately, Hell's a Poppin' kind of shot their wad in a way. Crazy House did well, not as well, not in fact, probably not nearly as well as Hell's a Poppin'. And it got progressively less as the rest of the movies, came about. And let's face it, as we say that Hell's a Poppin' is a unique experience, you can't keep doing a unique experience. It's not unique anymore. So it's their next movie really drives that home because
Hmm.
it's all about the first half hour where they actually match the craziness of Hell's a Poppin'. But
Yeah.
then it goes away. Then
Yeah.
it's kind of like it does become more of a traditional, comedy. But and this is the part I wanted to really get into, get your opinion about, Jerry.
Hmm.
The musical acts and the acrobatics and the jugglers and everyone but Olsen and Johnson. And as the movies wore on, it became more and more about the side acts,
Yep.
some of which are interesting, some of which aren't. I did
Hmm.
use my fast forward button, I have to say. And I've seen all these movies before. I knew what to expect. But I'm wondering, you, Jerry, I know you've only seen two. What did you feel about that phenomenon? The whole thing about basically being a vaudeville show.
Well, my first thought had been maybe Universal higher ups thought because this humor is so wild and so off the cuff, as it were, and insane, that they felt more of a need to include the songs, the other acts, the performers, in an attempt to balance it out for the general public.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
that being the case, that's one of my major complaints about most of the early Abbott and Costello movies as well. I want to watch this movie to see Abbott and Costello. That's why I chose to watch this film.
Mhm.
And great, I love the Andrews sisters. One less song wouldn't have upset me per
Mhm.
film.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the feeling that I got with Olsen and Johnson. The insanity level was at such a height that perhaps the studio felt they needed to bring in more of the other to balance it out.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. That's true. I think that's a great way to look at it. My only point is that with the Abbott and Costello movies, we're
Hmm.
talking about maybe three, maybe four songs.
Oh yeah.
With these movies, and we're talking about 68 minutes, a little over an hour, they cram in half the movie is
Hmm.
not Olsen and Johnson. It's all these
Hmm.
acts.
Yeah.
And it gets, I sat in the audience watching Crazy House, and every time a new act came on, you heard the audience go, "Hey," you know, it's like, "Hey, when are we going to get back to the comedy?"
Yeah.
Uh, and boy, towards the end, phew, I mean, I'll get into it then, but their
Hmm.
budgets
Hmm.
were cut so badly,
Yeah.
by See My Lawyer, the last one, that they
Hmm.
were actually using. They used a clip from the Ritz Brothers movie for Universal, Never a Dull Moment. They took a complete musical act out of that one and placed it into their movie, into Olsen and Johnson's movie.
Mm.
So that's the ultimate in cost cutting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk. I just want to talk really quick before we finish with Hell's a Poppin',
Hmm.
just to tell you that, to talk about the whole revival thing. Alexander Cohen, the producer, he bought the rights from the Olsen and Johnson estate, which is probably why it's still in litigation and all this stuff. But he went ahead and hired Jerry Lewis and Lynn Redgrave to star, because she looks so much like Chick Johnson.
Yes.
Um,
I get them confused often. Yes.
all the time, all the
Yeah.
time. I used to, whenever I'd call and I'd hear her voice on the phone, it was always a surprise. I was always waiting for that laugh, for Chick Johnson's laugh. What do you think of Chick Johnson's laugh?
Oh, I have to say, I am one of those that feels a comedian who laughs at his own material detracts from the material.
So you're not a Red
In
Skelton fan?
in general,
Ah,
Skelton, more often than not, it's he'll deliver the joke and then laugh at it.
right. Hmm.
Uh,
Oh, no, Chick
Chick
laughs before the
Chick
joke.
is laughing continuously.
Yeah, it was kind of his trademark.
Yeah.
I don't mind it because he does it so well. I mean,
Well, yes, it is a very unique laugh. Yes.
mhm. Very guttural. It's right there from the Le Bans. Uh, and Ole's got a good laugh too. I love when they kind of hold each other and just laugh as they're looking at something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
There would be.
That's fine. Yeah.
I love that. There's shots of
Yeah.
that. They're like two little gremlins. Just causing havoc wherever they go and laughing about it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you saw the Jerry Lewis version. I had read.
Yes.
I was following it diligently. I was a teenager, and they came out with, I don't know if it was Vanity Fair or Esquire, but there was a huge article about it, and it was pure anti Jerry Lewis. They blamed the entire thing on Jerry Lewis and his ego, his inability to get along with Lynn Redgrave. He hated the producer. It's just he kind of threw it under the bus,
Yeah.
which is really a shame because he wanted to do a Broadway show more than anything.
Yeah.
As he said when he joined Damn Yankees. I was going to say when he ruined Damn Yankees, but no, it's weird about that because some people really liked what he did in Damn Yankees, and other people were kind of like, it became the Jerry Lewis show.
Yeah.
I didn't pay for that. I wanted to see Damn Yankees, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
Well, you
So
see,
yeah,
there was the advantage growing up in Boston. We got a lot of stuff that was on its way to Broadway and
yes.
didn't quite make it. So that's how I saw Hell's a Poppin'.
I would have given anything to see it, anything at all. But anyway, it did not make it to Broadway. It was a major disappointment. Everybody lost their shirts,
Mm.
which sounds like an Olsen and Johnson gag.
Yeah.
But my shirt. Okay. Well, anyway, it's funny. I could talk about Hell's a Poppin' forever. And how about Martha Ray's song "Watch the Birdie"?
Oh, yes.
Oh, that is
Yes.
just great. Just great. But what we're forgetting, and we totally went by, it was probably the most famous thing about the movie. And that's the dance number with Whitey's Lindy Hoppers, they were
Yep.
called, billed here as the Harlem Congaroo Dancers. Now,
Hmm.
these are the same African American swing dancers who appeared in A Day at the Races with the Marx
Yep.
Brothers, doing that great, great stuff. And this all starts with a musical duo called Slim and Slam. And they start playing piano and bass. And then all of a sudden, everybody starts dancing. And it's incredible. It is
Yes.
just incredible. And people say that it's one of the best dance numbers ever put on film.
Mm.
So there you go. That's probably why the movie has a small level of fame, and that's with these dancers, and they
Hmm.
are amazing. If you could check it out. And then the other scene I wanted to mention before we moved on was the arrows. Martha Ray and CHIC and OLE have a conversation in front in front of this big target for archery, and Misha Auer is shooting arrows at them, and then eventually Hugh Herbert comes and he shoots about 1,000 arrows at one time. But the thing is, as they're talking, you can see that they are stopping at specific places. Even their heads are in specific places in
Mm-hmm.
front of the targets,
Mm-hmm.
so that arrows are actually being shot from off screen. These are not
Mm-hmm.
the things from behind being pushed through.
No, no.
Somebody is shooting these arrows, and I can't believe that the actors did this. It's really, really close.
Yes.
And it turns out to be hilarious. The last thing where he shoots about 20 arrows at Martha Ray, and she's still talking, as it's going. But anyway, it's a very funny scene, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just one of like 1,000 funny scenes in this movie. Uh, and there's one throwaway gag when Jane Frazee says to Hugh Herbert, "Don't you know about love?" And he says, "No, not me. I'm a married man." Oh, and Whitey's Lindy Hoppers got the
Mm-hmm.
name. It's not a racist thing. The bouncer at the Savoy Ballroom in New York noticed all these great dancers and decided to put them together. And his name was Herbert White. So, and he
Oh,
was known as Whitey. So they became Whitey's Lindy Hoppers. And that's the
okay.
history of that. Okay. So anyway, there's just way too many gags. I'm looking at my notes here, and I've got about 1,000 of them. There's just, I don't know. There's just so many. Okay, so we're talking about Crazy House now. This was made in early 1943. The boys in between Hellzapoppin' and Crazy House were opening a new Broadway show, Sons of Fun. So they were very busy with their brand. But Crazy House, directed by Eddie Klein, great comedy director, the first 20 to 30 minutes of this film is just as wild and crazy and
Mm-hmm.
clever and satirical as Hellzapoppin'.
Yep.
And I recommend it for that alone. Even if you want to turn it off after a half hour, you're going to see some of the funniest comedy you've ever seen in that first 20 minutes, half hour. Basically, it it recounts Olsen and Johnson coming back to Hollywood after Hellzapoppin' and to make their second movie for Universal. So it's all true. It's all
Original.
based on truth, right? And they have a parade up Hollywood Boulevard with all their circus animals and clowns and acrobats and jugglers and musicians. And there's Olsen and Johnson right at the front, coming in. Word gets out at Universal Studios that Olsen and Johnson are coming. So you have Johnny Mac Brown on his horse yelling, Olsen and Johnson are coming. Oh, head for the hills, Olsen and Johnson. And everybody's screaming and running in different directions. Then all of a sudden, Andy Devine is on his little motorbike. Olsen and Johnson are coming. And people are crazy and running around. Leo Carrillo comes out. Oh my God, I hear that Olsen and Johnson are coming. So the studio gates are closed. They are not letting Olsen and Johnson inside the studio. So what would any normal two people do that want to get into the studio? They get two cannons that fit grown men. So Shemp Howard and Freddie Sanborn supply the cannons, stuff CHIC and OLE into their cannons, and shoot them off. And in true animation, I'm sure this is Dave Fleischer too, the animated CHIC and OLE go flying through the studio and actually dip down. I love when they're flying at a certain trajectory and then they dip
Yes.
down, and then they crash through the wall of the secretary to the head of the studio. And they would just walk up, they brush themselves off, they walk up to the secretary and they say, she goes, "Who are you?" And she goes, "Olsen and Johnson." And she screams, "Olsen and Johnson!" And she jumps from her chair to the top of her desk, which leads to a trap door, which takes her away. She's gone. I mean, you tell me. I mean, this is just wonderful stuff. Uh, and it looks like she hurt herself, by the way. It looks like she hit the
Mm.
edge as she went down. But anyway, so not to be deterred, Ole picks up the phone and calls the head of the studio. And the head of the studio, "Hello." And he's like, tell NG Wagonhorn that Universal's greatest comedy team is here. And he goes, oh, Abbott and Costello, send them right in. so so Ole goes to open the door. He goes to the doorknob and he can't open the door. He just can't do it. And Chick just walks over to the opposite end of the door and opens it like it should on the other side. These are the kind of things you have to just stay awake. You have to watch because they throw in
Yes.
90 gags. So they go in and they just create havoc with the head of the studio, tearing his clothing, blowing up his desk, literally blowing up his desk.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a huge hole in the middle. The guy's played by Thomas Gomez, who usually plays, dramatic roles, and he's just wonderful as the studio head. So anyway, he tells the guys to get out. I'm not going to deal with you ever again, blah, blah, blah. And he leaves. So what do? They decide to take Robert Page, who has also been fired, and they're going to do their own movie. They're going to produce their own movie. They're going to raise the money, blah, blah, blah. This is where the plot comes in. They meet Percy Kilbride, who is soon to make Universal his home with the Ma and Pa Kettle movies. But this is before that, and he's very good. He's very funny. He plays a millionaire, but he's a lunatic, and he doesn't have any money, but nobody knows that. So these guys are spending money right and left. Then you meet our villains, and even the villains are comical. You've got Richard Lane, you've got Billy Gilbert being very funny, you got Benny Baker, and who's the other one? Not Benny Baker. I forget. But there's four of them. Oh, Chester Clute and somebody else. But anyway, their plan is to rent all of their equipment to Olsen and Johnson and charge them exorbitant fees, like for the cameras, the sets, the studio rental, everything. They're just going to overcharge them like crazy and make a fortune at their expense. Okay, so there you go. We've got our conflict. We've got the crazy millionaire. Now they need their leading lady. And since they can't have Martha Ray, they have another, how can I put it, infused with dynamite leading lady by the name of Cass Daly. Now, if you don't know Cass Daly, she is, I don't know how to put this. She's, to me, Martha Ray is just enough. Cass Daly oversteps that boundary with quite a step, with quite a long step. Now, don't get me wrong. I really like her. I think she's very funny. I love her singing voice, and I love the shape of her body. And when I say that, she does a thing where she turns profile, sticks her butt about a foot away from where it should be. It's like way sticking out, and her back arches. You have to see it to believe it. And she does some numbers that are just fantastic. But anyway, we meet Cass Daly, and she's a lookalike. She's a Cass Daly lookalike who doubles for her, does her stunt work. But Chick and Ole don't know that, and they immediately sign her to a contract for like $1,000 a week and blah, blah, blah. And then they find out that it's not Cass Daly, and they have to do whatever they can to make it right. And I love the scene where they cause her laryngitis when they rehearse her.
Yeah.
They call her to a rehearsal, and they know that if she can't perform, the contract is null and void. So they make it a point to make her lose her voice. So they're doing all these things with, ice, sitting on ice. Then they want to give her lessons in comportment. So they make her stand up straight, and they want to put a book on her head. And they grab the biggest dictionary I've ever seen in my life.
It takes both of them to put it on her head. Yes.
They both have to carry it and then put it on her head. Then they chain a ball and chain to her ankle, and she has to walk around singing scales as she's doing this. And eventually she loses her voice. But Cass Daly, who absolutely hates Olsen and Johnson, steps in, and this is all plot stuff. She does the number instead of the double. They knew the double was going to do the number, so they took the film out of the cameras. And it turns out that Cass Daly really did the song, and they had this gold, and they didn't have any film in the cameras. So anyway, this blah, blah, blah. This is all part of the plot. So what I'm getting at with this movie is the whole first half is just nirvana. It's just comedy gold. And then, when I was sitting in the theater watching it with a full house, the laughs started getting a little less and a little less and a little less. And, after a while, it was kind of like, where are you going to go from here? So anyway, we have yeah, here they are. Andrew Toombs was the fourth crook in our band of
Mm-hmm.
crooks. If you remember Andy Toombs, he was one of the guys they considered replacing Robert Woolsey with Burt Wheeler
Mm.
because they weren't crazy about Robert Woolsey. Okay, so I love Franklin Pangborn in this movie as the hotel clerk, and they take out the guns again. They're shooting. They are just so dangerous. They are the most dangerous comedy act in the world. Now, Patrick Knowles is our leading man here. He's the one who's going to not Robert Page. Robert Page was on Hell's a Poppin'.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like you can replace them with people, good-looking guys, from Universal. Oh, look, there's Robert Lowry. But anyway, it's Patrick Knowles. He meets Martha O'Driscoll, beautiful Martha O'Driscoll, by the way, who's singing for a radio show. A guy walks around with a microphone. Do you have any talent? Would you like to blah blah blah? And he discovers her and makes her the lead in the movie they're making with Olsen and Johnson. She also is approached by Leighton Noble from It Ain't Hay. Remember the orchestra leader who was about as boring as they come.
Yep.
And that leads to another number with them. And the Modernaires from Glenn Miller's band, they make an appearance with their lead singer, Betty Hutton's sister, Marianne Hutton, who appears with the boys in Society. There's also Hans Conried, plays the costume designer. Always good to see him. And I wish they wouldn't use the DeMarcos, the dancing DeMarcos.
Mm.
It's like ballroom dancing. It wasn't interesting when they did it, much less watching it now. And the numbers go on forever. How many times is he going to spin her? So anyway, we're dealing with those musical numbers again. So Shemp keeps showing up to sell the boys things. You want to buy a clock on time? Want to buy an oven? It's hot. Things like that. Want to buy an anchor? Right off the boat. All these cornball jokes as the boys are walking down Crazy Street. And then they go into a nightclub, and there's the Delta Rhythm Boys. Now, that's where I sit up straight and I listen, because this is a musical number that you're not going to want to miss. Yes. These guys were part of Hell's a Poppin'. They were part of all their stage shows. They knew talent when they saw it. And these guys are just incredible. Okay, so Count Basie makes an appearance on this too. And also Ramsey Ames and her Tropicana's. What? Ramsey Ames was like this horrible actress at Universal. She didn't have an ounce of talent. But she was gorgeous. Let me put it that way. She was gorgeous. She was in one of the Mummy movies. All those Lon Chaney Mummy movies are pretty much the same. But she was the pretty girl in one of the Mummy movies. I can't remember which one. Okay, so Charlie Middleton shows up as the sheriff, and he tells them, unless you pay all your bills, we are going to attach this movie. We are going to sue you in court, and they do. Not before Bobby Barber makes an appearance and they pull off his toupee. So anyway, they're taken to court. Edgar Kennedy is the judge, thank goodness. And it turns out that they make such a ruckus that they decide they're going to auction the movie off to the highest bidder. And the judge is going to come and they're going to watch, what they do, and he'll judge from that rather than what's going on in the courtroom. So anyway, Olsen and Johnson find out that the crooks stole most of the movie and there's only the first reel. So they show the first reel and it's very entertaining, very good until it gets to another song. And Patrick Knowles actually went out and got into a fight with a guy who was stealing the film and found the rest of the film. What I find funny about this, and even when I was a kid, I used to watch this on WOR, Channel 9. This was on all the time. They show the rest of the movie, and it's actually shorter than the first reel. They just wanted to get to the end, And then they start the auction. And it's wild, it's crazy. And the wonderfulness of this irony is just, it wasn't lost on me. They went to the head of Universal first, who threw them out of the office. Well, the head of Universal was actually there, sitting in his chair, and CHIC put an electric thing under under his seat. So when Ole from the stage says, "Now who wants to buy this movie? Stand up!" And of course they do the electronic thing, and he stands up, and he ends up buying the movie for $1 million. So the boys sell the movie. Everything is wonderful. The lovers, Martha O'Driscoll and Patrick Knowles, embrace and kiss. Cut to Chick and Ole. Chick takes out a machine gun and shoots them both dead. He shoots them, and they both lie down dead. And Ole says, "What'd you do that for?" And Chick turns to the camera and says, "This is one movie that's not going to have a happy ending." The end. Good night, folks. Now, I'm sorry, but they won. They won my love, my affection. Whatever I love about Olsen and Johnson is right there in what might be one of the best endings ever. Gary, Crazy House. Tell me, baby. Crazy
Well,
House.
yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, surprise. I agree with you.
Yes.
One thing I hadn't really noticed is how much Mel Brooks owes to Olsen and Johnson.
Oh,
Because
please.
if you think about this movie in particular, the whole point is they're trying to make this movie by getting people to be in it and to back it, which is silent movie. That's what Mel
Yeah.
Brooks, that was the whole premise of silent movie.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things I loved about Crazy House, and it caught me by surprise, I'm watching the opening credits and a title card comes up introducing, and then a whole list of names. And the first
Right.
name on the list was Alan Jones. And I'm going, wait a minute. What do you mean you're introducing Alan Jones? This is 43?
43. Yeah.
He did Night at the Opera in 35. What do you mean you're introducing? And it caught my attention, and then I missed the rest of the card. So I'm watching the rest of the movie, and I go back to the opening credits, and I realize in the opening of the film, they have all these cameos.
Right.
And they listed all of those people under the Basil Rathbone, Nigel Bruce,
Johnny Brown, Andy Devine.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And so that I thought was ingenious.
Yeah.
That title card, but then also, as you said, the opening is so insanely crazy. Olsen
Mm-hmm.
and Johnson are arriving at Universal. It's all these people responding, like on the set of a Sherlock Holmes movie. Watson
Right.
comes in, and tells Holmes that Olsen and Johnson are coming, whatever.
Yeah. I'm Sherlock Holmes. I know everything. Yeah. Now, you know what I love, and I miss this gag because it's one of my favorites, and it's not even a huge gag.
Yep.
They come and they say, "Universal, we have arrived," and they take off their hats and they hold them up, and you hear an explosion, and they pull down the hats and they're smoking, and they've been blown up. Universal shot back and destroyed their hats. So what do? This is the difference between Olsen and Johnson and everybody else. Okay, they took them and they threw them on the floor. And that would have been the end, right? But what do? They reach into their coats and they take out two entirely new hats and put them on. Now, I'm sorry. This is Marxian. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's that crazy. In fact,
Yep.
it out crazies the Marx Brothers. So yeah, it's just wonderful, wonderful stuff. But again, it peters out towards the end. Now, here's what
Yep.
happened with Universal at this point. They put all the money in that they had put in for Hell's a Poppin', based on the success of that movie, and it was a great success. This one, the same amount of money was spent, but they did not get the same kind of returns. So the next movie they made was cut drastically, though the budget was cut drastically.
Yep.
There were not that many stars. There were, it's just even the idea of it being a haunted house comedy made it simple to film in one location for the most part. So they really did start saving money. And where did they start saving money? With the opening credits.
Yes.
We're talking about Ghost Catchers, by the way. 1944, Ghost Catchers, directed by Eddie Klein again. They stole the animated opening credits from Hold That Ghost. And because one was tall and thin and one was short and dumpy, they just used it for Olsen and Johnson. And right away, I say to myself, boy, they're saving money, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah. So just like the last movie, Edmund Hartman was the main writer. I will say that he was the producer on the last one, but I will say that the last one were the great Abbott and Costello writers, Lees and Ronaldo, wrote Crazy House. Another Abbott and Costello connection. Edmund Hartman was the producer and writer on this one, and he was an Abbott and Costello, an old hand with them. Most of the songs, the newer songs, were written by Paul Webster and Harry Revel, who wrote the songs for It Ain't Hay, remember? But then redeemed themselves with the songs from Hit the Ice. They were still under contract to Universal. We have our cast on this one. Oh, by the way, when the titles come up for Ghost Catchers, or is it no, Ole Olson and Chick Johnson, they actually come out. They break through the O's in their names, and you see them looking frightened, looking around. I love that touch. I love that. That's very Abbott and Costello.
Yep.
So we have in the cast, we have Gloria Jean, who was hired originally as a replacement for Deanna Durbin at Universal as a young singer, operatic singer, but, pre-teen or early teen. Now here she's 18. She has just turned 18. And I looked that up specifically because one of the main gags in the movie is that the ghost in the house, Wilbur, keeps pinching her in the butt. And you don't do that to a preteen, to someone who's younger than 18.
Right.
So I looked it up, and she was 18. So that's good. Martha O'Driscoll is back as her older sister.
Mm-hmm.
Her father is played by Walter Catlett. They're all from Georgia, so they all speak with those heavy accents. And Walter Catlett is taking his daughters to New York so they can debut at Carnegie Hall. He has no advance. He has no PR people. He just wants to buy out the hall for one night, and he knows that they're going to fill the hall and pay for everything. And of course that doesn't happen. So that's kind of the plot. It's really weird. Catlett is there from Georgia with his two daughters to do their debut at Carnegie Hall. They have a house that they are left by a distant relative, and it's haunted. And they have to spend the night there, the first night. And it's, Wilbur is the ghost. The backstory is that Wilbur, during the turn of the century, was throwing a huge New Year's party. And I don't know, he was in love with someone or whatever, but he ended up jumping out of a third-story window, and the party never ended. So basically, how they have to exorcise the spirit of Wilbur, they have to finish the party. And that's what they do. They all dress up at turn of the century clothing, and they sing a lot of boring songs. Oh, God, you just want to shoot yourself after a while. Now, during the course of all of this, we meet our villains. They're murderous. They're very serious murderers. We don't know who the boss is, but his minions, his thugs, are Andy Devine, of all people, dressed as a horse, and Lon Chaney, dressed as the bear. Now I say the bear because it's the same bear that shows up in every Abbott and Costello movie. Not the name of bear. Oh, God. But anyway, so they're all dressed up so they can scare them out. And here's the deal. This is Olsen and Johnson. I don't think you'd ever find this in another movie. Why are the gangsters there? And why are they murdering people? And why are they trying to take over? The liquor in the wine cellar supposedly is worth like $1 million. Who would come up with something like that? The liquor? It's not like there's jewels buried underneath. There's a treasure here. Blah, blah. Liquor? So anyway, that's the plot. And there are guest stars galore, top of which is Morton Downey. Mm-hmm. Morton Downey Sr. Now, if you remember Morton Downey Jr., he made quite a splash during the 1980s as a trash talk host, probably the most famous of the bunch at that time, before he was pretty much told to get lost. I think he's dead now. But his father was one of the most popular Irish tenors in America. And if you remember, the Three Stooges did a world tour with him as the star. Morton Downey was the star. The Stooges were like the comedy relief of this tour. But anyway, Morton does These Foolish Things Remind Me of You, a really good song done in a way that I wanted to shoot myself. His voice is way up here. And then we have Ella Mae Morse. Now, Ella Mae was very famous back then. Her big hit song was Cow Cow Boogie, singing the Cow Cow Boogie in the same old way. Come to tie, come to yippee. She was a hell of a jazz singer. She was terrific. But she's in this movie, and it's weird because she's playing kind of a villainess.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that she's there to sing a few songs. She's there to be the competition for Martha O'Driscoll with Kirby Grant, another
Yes.
great, exciting personality that university was hiding from everyone, and for good reason. Kirby sings a couple of really boring songs in this movie, but LMA Mars still likes him and is constantly making cracks about Martha O'Driscoll and, her heavy Southern accent and all this stuff. And the funny thing is, she doesn't have one. Uh, so we've got that, and it's never resolved. It's never, it just kind of goes away. This whole triangle thing, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
work. So anyways, they have to throw that party that works to get Wilbur out, but the movie doesn't end there. It keeps going. They decide that they have to figure out who the boss is, who the main killer is. Now, I didn't mention that the manager of their nightclub, Olsen and Johnson's nightclub, which is right next door to the haunted house, is Leo Carrillo. We all know Leo Carrillo. Oh, Cisco. You remember the Cisco Kid and a million movies at MGM and
Yep.
whatever. He was your typical, stereotypical Mexican character, even though he was mostly Italian. Very popular in Los Angeles. In fact, there is a beautiful beach named after him in Santa Monica, Leo Carrillo State Park. But anyway, Leo turns out to be, well, maybe I shouldn't. Well, I already blew it. He turns out to be the murderer, and he's wearing a mask that was taken from Lon Chaney Jr. as the mummy. It's a mummy mask. And if you're a monster kid like Jerry and myself,
Yep.
you
Yep.
recognize the mummy mask. But the funniest thing to me was when they finally capture him, right? They knock him down. He's laying on the floor on his back, and CHIC is sitting on his stomach. He goes, I confess. Just get off my stomach. That's it. They cut away, and that's it. You don't see him being taken away. You don't hear anything bad.
No.
It's just get off my stomach. Again, Olsen and Johnson. And then, of course, they finish with a big number, and Gloria Jean gets pinched again, which she does throughout the entire movie. But anyway, that's the movie. Leonard said it was one of their best. Leonard really, really liked Ghost Catchers. And to tell you the truth, I like it too. I don't think it's nearly as good as Hell's Poppin',
No.
and I don't think it reaches the great moments of Crazy House. But it's a fun movie. If they would just cut maybe 16 of the songs out, and the jugglers and all this stuff, I mean, it's cute and everything, but it just goes on and on and on. And CHIC and OLE end up on screen for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's the main complaint I hear about Olsen and Johnson movies. Okay, so there we are, Ghost Catchers. And go ahead.
I'm so frustrated by this. Yes, there are so many points and plot points and turns of business in this movie that go nowhere. Not the least being, she's supposed to sing at Carnegie Hall. Her sister's going to accompany her on the piano. One ticket has been sold.
Right.
And so the people at Carnegie Hall say, I'm sorry, we had to schedule something else because you only sold one ticket. However, the person who bought the one ticket is insisting on a concert.
Right.
But they don't want to leave their house.
Right.
So we're going to do the concert over the phone. And the entire climactic musical presentation, not only her, but the backup singers and they've all got telephones that they're singing into. It is just the most ridiculous. It's crazy.
After a while, by that time I was a little numb. I watched 4 Olsen and Johnson movies in 2 nights.
Yes,
and made notes
yes.
and rewound and watched again, and
But then they never tell you who the person is.
Right.
You never find out.
Right.
Anyway.
But they get $500.
Yes.
Remember?
Wow.
And that's another thing I can't figure out. By the way, here's for your trouble. Here's $500. Wow. Okay, great. I think I'll do a canceled show. Okay. One of the funniest things in the movie was when they're following the 2 dwarves, and they're dressed like the 7 dwarfs. They're and they're following and they're talking about it. I wonder where they're taking us. I wonder where they're taking us. And Chick says they're probably taking us to see Snow White. And one of the dwarves turns on him and says, Snow White, everywhere we go, everywhere we go. He loses it. It's so funny. It's so out of the blue.
Yep.
And it's only Olsen and Johnson. Only Olsen and Johnson. I love how Chick is dressed in that huge turban. He's dressed like he looks hilarious. Oh God! But anyway, you've got the whole thing about them kidnapping the father and Gloria Jean,
Yep.
tying them up, bricking them up in a wall so they'll die, and then they capture Chick and Ole and they put them in the same thing. It turns out that Wilbur comes back. The ghost comes back to help them, and he's Jack Norton, Hollywood's famous drunk, and he's kind of drunk in this one too. He loves the plum brandy. But anyway, they get out and, the crooks are rounded up and whatever. But you're right, Jerry. The whole Carnegie Hall thing is kind of like, what?
And then the other Abbott and Costello connection here, they actually reference Hold That Ghost. With the moving candle bit. And
I love it. I love it. And the way Ole says, do you remember Abbott and Costello? Remember Abbott and Costello? And Hold That Ghost, it turned out to be gangsters. I mean, they talk about the movie in the movie.
Yep.
And already, I think this is the third reference to Abbott and Costello. I'm not sure.
I think there's pretty much been one in every one of these movies, yes.
They bring them up all the time, but Abbott and Costello were the phenomenon at the time. And their movies are totally different. I mean, you can't look at one and think of the other because they're just totally different. I do like the ending on this one, too, where it looks like Ole's about to be choked by a hand, and Chick just looks at him and says, oh, okay, good night, folks. And that's it. It's the end. His partner's strangled.
Yep.
It's like, good night, folks. Oh, boy. Anyway, those are the boys. They are just out of control, crazy, nuts, deadly. The most deadly comedians ever.
Yes.
Now, this leads to their next film, which is called See My Lawyer. Now, this is where they reached the bottom. This is where the Universal said, we're not spending any money. I think it's over. I think the audience got the idea, and they're not coming as much as they did, whatever. So See My Lawyer is based, it was made in 1945. It was based on a Broadway play from 1939 called See My Lawyer. It had 224 performances, which in those days was pretty respectable. George Abbott produced it, so it was a very legitimate show. The star was Milton Berle and Teddy Hart, Lorenz Hart's little brother, who was a very funny guy. You also had Millard Mitchell. Now, if you remember Millard Mitchell, he was the head of the studio in Singin' in the Rain.
Yes.
And this is when he was very young. Gary Merrill from All About Eve, from Marrying Betty Davis. This was one of his first roles on Broadway. Elliot Nugent, who not only was a great writer, but a really good comedy director, he plays a part in this movie. And then the director and one of the stars was Ezra Stone, who played Coming Mother Henry Aldridge on the radio.
Yep.
And he directs, and he's one of the stars of the show. So it was a successful show. Universal bought the rights to it back in 1939, but didn't do anything with it until somebody said, you know what, maybe Olsen and Johnson might be good for this show. And since it was a relative, they took his advice. So we have Eddie Klein back in the chair, the director's chair. You want to save money and you want it funny, you go to Eddie Klein. Written again by Edmund Hartman, another, like I said, Abbott and Costello guy, and Stanley Rogers, I believe, or Roberts, Stanley Roberts, who wrote on pretty low-level Universal product, including, I'm looking at his name right now, I have a huge poster of the Ritz Brothers in Never a Dull Moment, which is a lie, by the way. And it says, written by Stanley Roberts. But anyway, we've got this movie, See My Lawyer, and it's interesting because it starts out like a regular movie. It starts out like, it's interesting. We see these lawyers. They're young. They're starting out. They don't have any business. And they're about to lose all their furniture and all this stuff to the finance company. So what happens? One of their assistants, well, let's just say Alan Curtis, who is coming to an end to his Universal contract. He's the one that was in Buck Privates. He played the chauffeur. And I
Mhm.
told you that he had a chance at MGM to be a big star, but he blew it because of his ego, and they let him go. So this was, I think, one of his last for Universal. And then we have Noah Beery Jr. is our hero. Really,
Mhm.
he's the real leading man here, and he's a goofy looking guy. I like this because he's a normal looking guy.
Yeah.
Yet Grace McDonald, who is cute as a bug's ear, is in love with him. But again, we've got the triangle. Alan Curtis thinks she's in love with him, and she's really in love with Noah, and blah, 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 blah. All right. So one of their assistants is young Stanley Clements. Now, you know Stanley Clements. He was great in Going My Way with Bing Crosby. I believe
Mhm.
that was the year before this. Uh, from Bing Crosby to this. And so his sister is Grace McDonald, and she dances in Olsen and Johnson's show at a nightclub that's owned by Franklin Pangborn. Okay, you following this?
Mhm.
So he decides to go and see if he could borrow a little money from his sister, and he gets the idea that he's going to get himself hit by Olsen and Johnson's car, so there could be a lawsuit and all this other stuff. So I think my favorite thing about this movie are their cars. Olsen and Johnson, they get in their they want to get out of their contract with Franklin Pangborn because they've got an offer from Hollywood. Universal wants them to come back to make another movie. So they want to get out of their contract. In the meantime, they get in their car and there's a huge sign on top of the car that says Olsen and Johnson. Behind that car is a tiny little car with a sign on top of the roof that says not Olsen and Johnson. That's how they drive around the city. I'm sorry, but that just it tickles me.
Yep.
So Stanley Clements gets hit by the car, and Olsen and Johnson decide they're going to take him up to the office. They find his card conveniently placed, and they take him up to the lawyer's office. But getting there, they have to drive into the building, into the elevator, up to the floor, through all the hallways in their little car. So kind of like W.C. Fields in International House, right? With his
Yep.
little car, the spirit of
Yep.
South Brooklyn. But anyway, so they're driving around looking for the office. They finally get to the office and they grab Stanley Clements, but they grab him the long way. And every time they try to go through a doorway, they hit him in the head. And it's like really a solid shot. So by the time they got him into the office, he really is injured. It's funny stuff. It really is.
Mhm.
This movie gets a really bad rep. I mean, especially like Leonard Maltin and stuff like that. They say it's the worst of their Universals and stuff. And maybe it is. Maybe. Only because of the 3,000 musical numbers and
Yep.
vaudeville acts and all this stuff. I think they're in this movie less than any of their other movies.
But it does have some marvelous moments, like going back to they're driving to the lawyer's office. They're driving down the hallway and they stop to ask directions from a guy who's going into his office. You know, where's the law firm? Oh, it's down here into the okay. And he doesn't even flinch. They go on their way. He goes in his office. You know, it's like, yeah, this the fifth car that's come down this hallway today asking directions.
I didn't even look at it that way. That's very funny. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I mean, this is great stuff,
Yeah.
and this is stuff, if you're comparing to what's going on at Universal at the time, they're making, what is this, 1945? So
Hmm.
Abbott and Costello are making their movies. They're about to head into Little Giant and Time of Their Lives and all that stuff. But you could never mistake an Olsen and Johnson movie for a second for an Abbott and Costello movie.
No.
They are
No.
completely different. Again, Hell's a Poppin', I would put up with any Abbott and Costello, any great Abbott and Costello movie. I would put it up
Hmm.
against.
Hmm.
The following ones, no. I think Abbott and Costello made better movies than the three following Olsen and Johnson movies. But
Yep.
I do want a Universal collection, DVD or Blu-ray. Please,
Yes.
if you're listening, Universal, which I'm sure you're not, please. Maybe you know who might be listening? Universal International. But I doubt that too. They're out having tea with their pinkies out.
Yeah.
So we have Edward Brophy, who this may be one of his best performances. Now I don't know if you're an
Yes.
Ed Brophy fan, but I've followed him since way back. in The Thin Man, the early 30s. Actually, Buster Keaton is the person who discovered him. He was a crew member at Brophy, and Keaton was shooting the cameraman. And in the cameraman was a scene where he had to get dressed in this tiny cubicle, and he got Ed Brophy to be the other guy in the cubicle with him. And it worked out so well that Brophy started a new career and worked all the way up until his death in 1959. How about that? And he's hilarious in this movie. When he's on the stand with his mother,
Oh, yes.
oh, that is hilarious. They get him on the. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself.
You're getting
here
ahead,
I'm
but
getting
yeah.
excited. So anyway, another reason why I love this movie is a guy by the name of Gus Schilling. Now, Gus Schilling was in the last two. He showed up in small roles. It might have been only what was the one in Crazy House. He's the conductor, or is it Hell's a Pop? I can't remember. But he plays an orchestra conductor.
Mm-hmm.
But in this movie, he plays an agent who is trying to get his clients booked, and they're all terrible. One is worse than the next. And Olsen and Johnson, they're in the back of a car, they press a button, and all of a sudden they're out of the car. You know what I mean? They just get rid of them. And at the end, he does this thing where, oh my God, where they put this thing in his teeth and they push him off this thing, and he has to it's like, what are those, zip wires?
Yep.
And he goes across it's just, I can't explain it. Just watch it. It's called See My Lawyer. I'll have the link when we post this. So Gus Schilling is just wonderful. I love their driver who calls him Sahib. He's obviously like from Brooklyn, and he wears a turban. And what's his name from the Spider series? Yes, Sahib. Oh my God, it was so funny. So CHIC and OLE decide, like I said, they have to break their contract. So how do they do it? By going in one night and just insulting and abusing every customer. So all of a sudden, there are 39 lawsuits against Franklin Pangborn. And he's dying. He's just dying. He doesn't know how he's going to pay all this money. It's worth $10 million of his money, blah, 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 all 39. So he devises a plan to sell the club lock, stock, and barrel to Olsen and Johnson. And they figure, all right, since we did this to him, let's just buy it and our troubles will be over. But he turns around and says, ha, you signed the contract. It's now yours. You own this club, but you also own all 39 lawsuits. Ha, 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 ha. And he leaves. They inherit the 39 lawsuits, and they're not concerned. I mean, they're Olsen and Johnson, so they don't really give a crap. But, they're not concerned. And I'm wondering, why are they not concerned? So CHIC gets on the phone to one of the guys who they, screwed around with, and he's in a pool room. And he's like, yeah. And he goes, oh, hi, Louie. Good job. Drop the lawsuits, by the way. Get in touch with everyone else that we set up and just drop them. So they had actually planted all those people, and there were no lawsuits. And that's it. It's gone. But they also humiliated Ed Brophy while they were there. He gets a cake in his face or something like that. And he sues them. He sues Olsen and Johnson for $500,000. So they have to go to court. And oh my God, the courtroom. His mother is his lawyer. And his mother is Mary Gordon, Mrs. Hudson from the Sherlock Holmes movies, this dear old Scottish lady. And she comes out to question her son. And before she starts, she gestures for someone to come out of the back room. And who comes out? A violinist to play a sad song while he's telling his story. So you've not only got his mother doing the dirty work, but you've got a violinist bringing it home. And that's Leon Belasco, who is just fantastic. Yes. He was the violin player with Chico in Love Happy, remember?
Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, it turns out that I think I screwed up the plot. I'm mixing it up with Ghost Catchers.
No, but you're right.
Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they're in court, and the 39 lawsuits. Grace McDonald does 12 numbers. There is a weird one where she dances across from this guy on a platform, and she's dressed, it looks like a chicken. She looks like she's got these feathers all over her. She looks like a crazy bird It's really weird. You know that when they started out, their choreographers were like Nick Castle and, people of that level.
Yeah.
This is a guy named George Dobbs, who I've never heard of. I thought he worked for F Troop. Uh, so, so we have another big name, though, showing up here, who was not such a big name at the time, but Nat King Cole shows up with
Hmm.
his King Cole trio doing a song called Fuzzy Wuzzy. They do two songs, actually. That's the only one I recognized. I used to have that on a 78, by the way, the King Cole trio, and he's a baby. The thing I hate about it, and it's the same thing about the Whitey's Lindy Hoppers, they're all black. So they're all dressed as work people. They're all dressed as cooks or valets or maids. It's really
Yeah.
horrible. Nat King Cole and his two great jazzmen are dressed as cooks. They look ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but the music is great, and you get to see him play the piano, which you don't often get to see,
Yeah.
on the film clips. Before he turned white, and he did. He became more of a white singer, and he found his greatest success doing that.
Yeah.
He gave up the jazz. So their movie is canceled. Hollywood doesn't want them, which is the truth, basically, since this is their final movie of all time. So they have to change things around. God, what else? There's a bookie in the courtroom who leans over to CHIC and OLE to give them odds, and it turns out that's Joe Kirk, who is
Hmm.
Lou Costello's brother-in-law. Another Abbott and Costello connection. OLE and CHIC show up in British wigs and robes in the courtroom. I love that. They have an elephant come in who lifts its right leg and does the oath, um, and then sprays water all over everybody. Oh God! Even Pangborn testifies. The elephant eventually takes the judge in its trunk and just lifts him up out of the building. So the court continues at the nightclub, and there are more specialty acts, especially a woman named Yvette, who they're trying to push. I don't know who the hell she is. She sings two songs that never end. It's kind of
Hmm.
like Sherry Lewis's old song, the song that never ends. Oy. You just want a license to hunt her. And Gus Schilling does that last stunt, which is really funny. He plays the agent, so he turns around. CHIC and OLE are finally getting him to do the stunt, not one of his clients. And he turns to them and says, "This is great. I'll get to keep 10% of what I make." That alone. Anyway, so the finale is everybody showing up, whoever sang a song in the world, all show up to do a little bit of their number. And finally, the guys are singing a song, and that's the end. So that's the end of Olsen and Johnson's movie career. They had their
Yep.
first career with Warner Brothers. I think they made 4 movies for them, or it might have been 3. And then they made 2 rather decent movies for Republic Studios, low budget affairs, nothing fancy or as crazy as this. One was called Country Gentleman, which is a very mild movie. In fact, Ole is the romantic lead, and he's got a mustache. That
Hmm.
proves it. Um, which one's the romantic lead? Well, that one's got a mustache. And then they made another movie the following year for Republic called All Over Town. And that's the one to watch. It's in public domain, it's on YouTube, and it's a lot of fun. It has a lot of people from the Laurel and Hardy world in it, including, in a really good part, James Finlayson.
Hmm.
So, it's really a lot of fun, and the boys are in rare form. They do some of their stand up stuff, they do their ventriloquist dummy bit, which is hilarious. So yeah, that's their second movie career, was those 2 movies for Republic. And then they went to, after their huge success with Hell's a Poppin', they went to Universal and did their last 4 movies. And I told you how they ended up. They ended up doing reviews that were basically Hell's a Poppin' all over the place. I recently got a short film about the Indiana State Fair, I believe it was, and they show up, and
Mm.
CHIC is kissing a cow. They're laughing. So they basically took it on the road and were very successful, very rich. Ole, get this, Ole's daughter, May, married the son of Learjets.
Mm.
He inherited the Learjet industry, and
Wow.
that's Ole's daughter. So they say that Ole continued after CHIC retired. because he was sickly. And they said that Ole took gigs, and one of them was he showed up on Jackpot Bowling with Milton Berle, and while he was doing that, Ralph Edwards showed up to do a This Is Your Life, and Chick shows up at the end, dressed in the zoot suit and the whole bit. And I couldn't find it anywhere. I would
Mm,
love to see that. That would just be
mm,
great. But anyway, so yeah, Ole kept working until he couldn't anymore. And the two of them, like I said, they died within months of each other of the
yeah.
same disease, kidney
Wow.
disease, and are buried next to each other forever. Just like whatchamacallit, just like Dr. Cronkite and his only living patient, Smith and
Yeah.
Dale,
Smith and
are
Dale. Yeah.
also buried next to each other forever and ever. So that is the career of Olson and Johnson, and especially of their Universal movies.
Yep.
Jerry, here's my question, and
Yes.
I'm going to ask you to delve deep. If you had to compare the two teams and their films, how would you compare them? How would you put it into words?
Wow. Um,
Hmm.
well, basic style is to me what really differentiates them. Because Bud
Hmm.
and Lou stand them up in front of a microphone, they go to town. That's their strength, in my opinion.
Yeah.
The crosstalk, the wordplay.
Hmm.
Olson and Johnson, they need an arena with cannons and elephants and just
So
a whole
true.
a whole different flavor of humor.
Hmm.
And they each did their flavor exceptionally well.
Yes.
When they try to cross back and forth, that's where it gets kind of iffy, in my opinion.
Hmm.
Bud and Lou could handle the slapstick. They never went really to that extreme in any of their movies, but
Right.
they did enough crazy stuff to
Yeah.
to get that flavor. But Olson and Johnson, there was oh gosh, which one was it? In Crazy House, they actually do about 2 minutes of stand up at a microphone in the
Right.
nightclub.
Right.
And to me, that's where Chick's laugh irritated me a little bit. Because they're
Don't see
just
their Warner Brothers movies, buddy. Don't see them. He laughs more in those movies than he does
okay.
anywhere else.
Well, it's again, it's not the laugh itself. In this particular scene in Crazy House, they're at a microphone, they're on the radio,
Hmm.
and they're doing a routine on the radio. It's just a crosstalk.
Right. This is
And
the whole thing about the stork coming with
yes,
the babies, which is a great joke.
yes, and they even mention Abbott and Costello in the joke too.
Oh, my wife's crazy about them. I love when he says that. Like Abbott and Costello. Oh yeah, my wife's crazy about them.
Yeah, yeah,
I love that. That's neat.
yeah. But yeah. Anyway, they were okay at that,
Yeah.
in my opinion. At the
Uh-huh.
crosstalk stuff, they were okay.
Hmm.
Their strength, by all means, was the insanity.
The insanity.
Going back to Hell's a Poppin', there's the one scene in one of the arguments with the projectionist where the
Oh,
film gets out of sync and the frame is cut in half, and Ole's talking up to Chick, who's looking down in the frame from above.
it's brilliant, by the way. I
Yes,
just think it's brilliant.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Who would think of that? I mean, seriously. And when they all start to push the frame up, you know what I
yes,
mean? When the film actually goes up, it's
yep.
it's it's miraculous. It really is miraculous.
You
And all
can't.
of a sudden, they're in front of all these different scenes. They're walking around as Indians or shooting at cowboys. I think
Yep.
doesn't one catch an arrow or something? I forget.
Yes, yes. It's very casually, and there
Very
he's got it.
casually. Um, but you're absolutely right. You hit it on the head. Their specialty was madness. It was
Yeah.
craziness. The more crazy, the better. I think that as I was watching, this is what I came away with, Jerry.
Hmm.
And this is a first for me because I've been a fan of theirs really since I was a little kid. They used to show Ghost Catchers all the time. They never showed See My Lawyer or Hell's a Poppin', but
Mm.
I got to see those other two, and I still love them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Despite the fact that we have to sit through all these stupid musical numbers. Imagine trying to get your little friends to sit through an Olsen and Johnson movie back
Oh,
then. You know what I mean? It
yeah.
was like every time a new song came up, you'd almost hear them groan, you know. But now they're grown adults. But
Uh,
it's these crazy kids today. But what I noticed was most of the jokes went to Chick. I wouldn't
mhm.
call Ole a straight man, but he was
No.
as close to a straight man as you could get under the circumstances. And Chick had some wonderful jokes. As you were going, this is what I noticed. As they go through the movie, they're little jokes, but they're
Yeah.
funny. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Ole will say something, out of the blue. Chick will answer with a joke, and he doesn't have to laugh at his jokes, and most of the
Mm-hmm.
time he doesn't. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so he's got these wisecracks that
Yeah.
just keep coming out of him, and it's really, really good, really
Oh,
good.
I gotta say,
And
there
did
was
you?
one line in Crazy House. It wasn't Chicks. It was actually delivered by Billy Gilbert at one
Yeah.
point. That kind of, to me, summed up the whole flavor of their humor. Gilbert, as a throwaway, says, "Oh, that's the straw that broke the cigarette's back."
Yes.
And you have to think for a second, but it's very funny.
It's clever. It's very, very clever. I loved his character. It was very Joe Pettibone from His Girl
Oh yeah.
Friday.
Oh yeah.
Bumbling, not. He couldn't get a sentence out straight. Funny performance. He was
Yeah.
good. But anyway, what I noticed was during Ghost Catchers. I wrote it down. In fact, in my notes, I said they're in Abbott and Costello territory now.
Mm,
They are the most like Abbott and Costello than they've ever been
yep.
in Ghost Catchers, and it's
Yep.
just the scared takes, and stuff like that. That whole scene where Chick is getting dressed by an unseen force.
Yeah.
They're taking off his clothes, then they start spinning around, and all of a sudden they have pajamas on, and they go to bed, and it's like everything's normal until the double take. I'm like, I didn't put on my clothes, and then they get scared. So it is similar in that sense, and I
Mm-hmm.
think what they did was they went to school on Hold That Ghost and how successful it was, and they thought, well, let's try Olson and Johnson and see if they comply
Yeah.
with a format, you know while there's certain madness going on. But yeah, I found it very interesting. There's also, when you talk about Universal, they also hired the Ritz brothers in 1940
Mm-hmm.
and made movies with them until like 1943 or 44. I think they made like four of them with the Ritz brothers. So Universal was like stacking the deck
Yeah.
comedically. But the interesting thing is, Abbott and Costello were the only act to last. And they
Mm-hmm.
lasted 15 years,
Yep.
whereas the others lasted 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells you a lot about the skill, the appeal of Abbott and Costello, and just how beloved they were.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
incredible, very incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it pays to go through the Ritz Brother movies at some point because they were at Universal at the same time, but we'll think about that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where we're going to go from here. I did get a suggestion from somebody that we actually watch Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein and do a commentary as we watch. So that might be next. If you're listening to this right now and you like that idea, let us know. Okay. And I want to thank everybody for the really nice comments on our YouTube page. You're still not subscribing like you should be. And again, I'm going to be a broken record and tip and tip and tip and hi. That could almost be a Bud Abbott bit. Certainly. Um, oh God, Bud Abbott, do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Certainly. What's the idea of questioning me? So anyway, I can't remember what I was saying.
Hit like and subscribe.
Thank you.
There we go.
And yeah, we really want that to build up. I'm looking at some of our podcasts, and we've got close to 3,000 listeners on some of them. So, hey, subscribe. That's what we're charging you. Okay. It doesn't cost much. In fact, it doesn't cost anything.
Yep.
So the money you're not spending on gasoline, please send us that money and we will be very happy. No. So anyway, that's the show. That's the podcast for this 2-week period. And Jerry, I want to thank you for, okay, this is serious now. I want to thank you for watching all 4 films, because I know that's it's a time restraint. We all have stuff we need to do. And even for me, it was hard to fit this in and do all the notes and everything else. And I hardly used any of my notes, to believe it or not. So I learned a good lesson here. But thank you, Jerry, for doing that and being well versed and educated about these two wonderful comedians.
Always my pleasure, and I strongly encourage everybody listening right now, if you have not already, click on those links and watch these films. You will not only enjoy yourself with the films, but you'll also enjoy this episode a little more so.
Yeah, right. You'll understand what we're talking about, basically. But if I could just say, watch Hell's a Poppin', more than any of the others.
Yeah.
And even if you just watch one, watch Hell's a Poppin', because
Yep.
it'll change your life. It's incredible. You know, my writing partner, Matthew Conium, who wrote the annotated Abbott and Costello with me, he hates this movie. He hates Hell's a Poppin'. But then again, he doesn't like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein either. So, you know, we're dealing with someone who is, might need help mentally. I'm kidding, Matthew. Matthew's actually going to New York for the first time in April to do a Marx Brother thing with that other podcast. I can't think of the name of it. But anyway, okay, everyone. Take good care of yourselves, everyone. Stay safe out there, please, because it's crazy, like Olsen and Johnson crazy out there now.
Yeah.
So please take care of yourself, take care of your health, and thank you for listening again. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Jerry, always a pleasure, my friend.
And right back at you.
Adios, amigo.